Where do I even begin? If you asked me, I guess 4 days ago now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, if you asked me 4 days ago, Lord, what do you think of Mario Sunshine? I'd be like, oh, I love Mario Sunshine. Oh, God. All right. It's easy to explain why. This is one of those times when I can easily and effortlessly point to this and say, this is why I liked this game. Because what I would do is I would replay the first few levels. You know, we've got Bianca Hills, we've got Noki Bay, actually Noki Bay's later, but you can unlock Noki Bay pretty easily and pretty quickly. And we've got the harbor, which is mostly okay, and then we've got the theme park, which is pretty legit, for the most part, and the beach, which is okay. And I just replay parts of those levels. And you're probably thinking, but Laura, you have to do the 7th shine in order to progress through the game. Yeah, I know. And then I'd put the game down, and I'd go play something else. This game also absolutely shines on the story axis. Now, I had several people be confused about that on chat, and that's understandable. No judgment, no trying to look down upon people from up top my elitist post, which I tumble off of, and then I fall flat on my face, because that's how that works. No. The reason... the reason that I say that is because, let's be clear, the plot of this game sucks. It's so bad that every single plot beat I gave a negative for. The intro, the big cutscene in the theme park, and the outro, which are the 3 plot points in this game, all got a negative. The intro is stupid. It posits the idea that nobody can tell the difference between someone who looks so different than Mario it's silly, who even sounds different than Mario, and Mario, who also just landed on an airplane. Sure. This is true for everyone involved. Everyone seems to think that Bowser Jr., spoilers, is totally Mario. Then we have the court scene. Okay, that's silly. I get it. But it's still kind of aggressively stupid. But hang on. I'm not done complaining. Because it's not just aggressively stupid. It's never brought up again. Never comes up again. But wait, it's even better. Because it's totally unnecessary. What is the point of the trial scene? To get Mario invested in helping. You are forced to go clean up the town. Okay, that's cool. Do you think you had to do that? Do you think Mario wouldn't have been inclined to help? Like, I don't know, he does all the other times. And also he did in this very game at the airstrip. So, that sucks. Then we get to the scene where Bowser Jr. reveals himself. Everything wrong with this scene boils down to nitty-gritty details about the presentation, the camera angles, the long pauses between dialogue, the fact that Princess Peach has apparently replaced her brain with a balloon. All of this stuff just kind of drags that scene down. Then we get to the outro. I can't even explain what's wrong with the outro because it's just Flargenschen Flimidalik blah blah. I hope that made sense, but in the off chance it doesn't, I'm going to try to explain this. It's nonsensical. There's tone whiplash all over the place. It starts off with this wah, 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 like it's a cartoon kind of a thing. It's like, okay, so we're going with the cartoony angle. I'm with that. But then we cut to Peach doing like a weird non-joke. And then we cut to Bowser who's like, oh, I'm here. And then we cut to... so then we beat the boss. Then we cut to them falling. Peach is, of course, fine. Because why wouldn't she be? She's frickin' Peach. She's been fine since Mario 2. Why is she still... Then... hang on, I'm not even done. Because the thing that really pisses me off is then Flood dies. Now, they kind of showed this. Flood's dialogue was getting more and more erratic during the fight. But I decided, for fun, to go ahead and count 1 minute and 28 seconds. For 1 minute and 28 seconds, Flood is dead. And then he comes back. That is the definition of the 5-minute retirement. And I hate that trope in general, but this might be one of the worst examples that I've ever seen. And then we cut to Bowser and Bowser Jr. And Bowser Jr. is like, yeah, I know she's not my mother. But you know what? Bowser's like, what's that? I want to beat Mario someday. Why? Where does that even come from? All of this is nonsensical and terrible and dumb. And you're probably thinking, Laura, you just told me you love the story of this game. Of course I do. Remember that story is this gigantic half of a work. This whole side of things is all about story. We've got characters, we've got characterization, we've got themes, we've got setting, we've got presentation. I'm always reminded of something that was told to me a long time ago. Someone said, how could you give any pluses to the story of Doom Eternal? Doom Eternal's plot sucks. And that sentence right there explained why my throat suddenly seized up. Lore Runner dies on camera. I get a lot of clicks, at least. It explains how people don't understand this concept. Plot is the sequence of events. What's the plot of Doom Eternal? Well, I'm not going to spoil it for you. What's the plot of Mario Sunshine? They're on vacation. Bowser Jr. impersonates. They rescue. That's it. That's the plot. You could summarize it in one sentence if you worked it a little bit. But the story is the context. This is the easiest way I've ever found to describe this. Everything that gives context for what you're doing and why you're doing it, that's the story. I've talked about this in the Mega Man games. I've talked about this in the original Super Mario Brothers. I've talked about this so many times. The story of this game is phenomenal. Think about it for a moment. Put your mind into the game for just a second. No, not literally. No, put down the knife. Oh, God, now I've gotten other people killed too. Everyone's dying today. Happy Thanksgiving. So, put yourself into the mindset. Imagine the game for a moment. Imagine the harbor. Imagine the bundles of fish and squids. Imagine the people working the docks. Imagine the ship, and imagine the crane, and imagine the people going off and trying to just enjoy the seafood. Imagine the stalls. All of this stuff, all of this visual storytelling, all of the presentation and the NPCs and the doodads and the music and the tone and the feel and the flavor and the vibe. All of that is awesome. Consistently throughout the whole game. It's probably one of the most atmospheric Mario games I've ever played. It probably is literally the second most atmospheric Mario game I've ever played, only surpassed by Mario Odyssey. And I love it. I love it. And I'm gushing about this because it's so well done. Delfino Plaza is probably one of the best designed hub levels I've ever seen in my life. No, seriously. Obviously, there's all the story stuff I just mentioned. You know, you've got the people wandering around. You could talk to just about everyone. There's a huge number of just NPCs wandering around in this game. Think about that for a second. There's NPCs in almost every stage, too. In fact, there are NPCs in every stage, except for the bonus optional secret stuff, and, of course, Corona Mountain. So, all the main stages have people that you can just talk to, and what they say changes based on which particular version of the stage you're in, too. Lots of stuff to talk to. Lots of, I call that set dressing, NPC set dressing. You know, it's adding NPCs to really flesh out the world and make it feel more alive. I can't imagine this, but I've never thought I'd say this, but this is effectively a bit of Lindblom effect, making this feel like an actual place we're visiting. But let's look at the gameplay axis for a moment. Let's look at Delfino Plaza, because it's probably the best part of the entire game on the gameplay axis. Obviously, it's a hub. Cool. It's got plenty of secrets, plenty of options, plenty of routes to navigate. There's actual just on ground routes. There's plenty of jumps that are clearly designed around the different kind of jump tech you have in this game. There's sections that are designed around the flood, the turbo stuff, and the rocket stuff both. There's little details, though. All that's just normal hub stuff and well designed. But the little details really nail it. The fact that, for example, there's no such thing as a part of this stage that you just kind of get stuck on, unless you're just way out in the water. If you just swim out into the water, then yeah, you're just nothing there. But let's say you walk over to the side by the lighthouse, okay? But put that in your mind for a second. And what is there up against that wall? Well, there's these tiny little awnings, or whatever they're called, overhangs. And you can jump on them, and they're bouncy. That seems like such a minor thing, but I wanted to point to that one in specific, because that's exactly my point. That kind of little attention to detail is everywhere in Delfino Plaza. At almost every stage of this stage, there's little things like that to help encourage you to not only keep moving, but to keep moving quickly and smoothly. The fluidity of it, no pun intended, for a game entirely focused on water and flood, is awesome, and I cannot gush enough about Delfino Plaza. Which is good, because the rest of the problems start coming in. But let's keep being positive for a moment. Let's talk about the elements of movement tech. So they got rid of, they got rid of the long jump for some reason. At the very least, you could have given it back to us when we're in floodless sections. And they got rid of the backwards the crouching backwards jump. I know you kind of can do that when you have flood, because you've got the shotgun shot, but you also can't do that when you don't have flood. So once again, the tech is just kind of ejected. Most of the other movement tech is the same as Mario 64. And It's still good for the same reasons it was in Mario 64, but here's where we have to talk about the controls. Now, I prefer the controls in this game to Mario 64's, but I'm hesitating so much here because while I feel like Mario 64's controls had issues, Sunshine's kind of does. To be clear, I think it took until Mario Galaxy for them to figure out how to do 3D platforming controls and camera. I think both 64 and Sunshine were learning experiences, and they're still trying to figure this whole thing out. And anybody who's played this game knows what I'm talking about. It's so hard to describe. You feel loose in this game because the game likes to interpret what you're doing, and a lot of context-sensitive inputs are kind of infers how you move. And even though there's no squiggity, you still juke around a whole lot for very little movement. Like you do this and you're going to go just like that, right? It's all over the place. And the game likes to kind of give you little edges, but because the game is interpreting so much, sometimes it'll shove you through things or put you places you don't want to go or make you do something you didn't want to do. One of my favorite little tidbits in this game is when I was like crawling on the underside of a thing and I was just sitting there waiting for the platform to fall so I could go, and the platform fell and took me with it. And that's what I mean by interpreting. There's a lot of assists in this game, something that the Mario series would continue to use, all the way up to and including Odyssey, in order to try and encourage you to do what he thinks you want to do. But I think they were still learning that. So while Mario 64 is arguably more precise because there are no assists, Mario Sunshine is still slightly different to control. And that's why I keep emphasizing that. It's not better controls, because it's not. It is simply different controls. What is better, definitively, is the power-up. So, let's rewind a second. Mario 1 had Mushroom, Flower, Invincibility Star. That's it. Mario 2 had nothing, because it's Mario 2. Mario 3 is when they started doing the power-up Mambo. It's like, okay, we got all sorts of power-ups, and they're cool and they're awesome. Then we had Mario World, which had all sorts of power-ups, and they're cool and they're awesome. Then we had Mario 64, which had 3. 2 of which are barely used. Cool, but barely used, and one of which kind of sucked to control. And they're kind of continuing that trend. Now, they would reverse this trend with Mario Galaxy. Galaxy 2, and Odyssey would go back into the power-up Mambo. But for some reason, for 64 and Sunshine, they decided to focus entirely on the movement tech and kind of reduce the power-ups. Now, I already talked about why that was a good thing back in Mario 64, and it's a good thing here, kind of. But Flood is awesome. So Flood obviously gives us a tremendous amount of control of our mobility and our movement because of all, it's hard to even explain. All you need to do is watch a speed run of this game to really understand what you can do with this. But the way that Flood changes, I talk about painting, right? I talk about painting what you can access with jump tech. It's a little bit different in 3D platformers than 2D platforms because, you're painting a full 3D space instead of a 2D space. But nevertheless, in a 3D platformer, the same concept still applies. This is what you can access and how. Flood, most notably the hover nozzle, now allows you to do so much more. It enables you to catch yourself on a fall. It enables yourself to slowly gain a little bit of height. It enables you just to massively increase your horizontal distance and a bunch of in-betweens, depending on, you can do a little bit up and then forward. You can do forward and then a little bit up and so forth and so on. The range that this allows, if you could picture just this giant mushroom, of space that you can access. It's mostly the horizontal thing, and then as you get more up and up and up, it gets larger, and then you've got this huge space you can reach here, and then you've got this space and this gigantic cylinder down here. It's this huge area you can access, and all of that's on you, the player. You decide what you access, how, and where. It's pretty much the exact same reason Peach is so useful back in Super Mario Bros. 2 and in Super Mario 3D World. But even more so, because you can actually gain height, and you can hold it for longer, and you can change your horizontal movement, and so forth and so on. This is ignoring all the other stuff you can do with this in an offensive level. Let's ignore that for a second. Just the hover nozzle is an amazing addition to your movement tech. But then we have the turbo nozzle, which is just fun. I don't have a better word for that. And then the rocket nozzle, which there's plenty of things you can do with too, including jumping and then shooting, or then double stacking a shot, or managing to get out of the water, or refilling, and blah, 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 blah. So, movement, awesome. The presentation, awesome. The stage design of Isle Delfino, awesome. How about the other stages? And that's where the game falls apart. I haven't talked about the behind the scenes yet, because believe it or not, there's very little info on the behind the scenes of this game. I went digging and found very, very little. Unfortunately, one of the people who was pushing this game the most is someone who I have the least ability to contact, because it was Mr. Iwata, which sucks. This is the first game done under his watch, and while there's some about this whole section of gaming, the problem is this is a period of gaming which we're technically still in, actually. But this is when this really became obvious. Games started being rushed as a normal thing, right about the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox era. Now, this is easy to explain why. The quarterly report problem, the economics problem, the money people I talk about so often who make the actual decisions when it comes to production and time and budget and all those fun things. People had figured out that video games were a money industry years before now. But by the time of this era, in the early aughts, this is when those money people were now entrenched. And investors were in charge, and investment cycles and groups were in charge, and now the money people are demanding more returns every quarter. Now, I know I speak negatively about this a lot, and it's for the reasons I'm about to mention, but it's worth noting that this isn't me being hyperbolic. More money now at the expense of then was the goal. In fact, there's some people you could, if you want to do some research on this, economists back in the 50s and 60s who pretty much started this particular method of economic acquisition and trying to make a bubble now, which then bursts, so you make a bubble now. This is a deliberate intent. Whether that works or not is a little more debatable thing, but we do see some of the negative consequences when it hits the entertainment industry, like with this game, bringing it back in. Because these games were rushed. These games were pushed out when they probably shouldn't be. Now, what's funny is they actually were asking for more time on some of these games, but they didn't always get it. They didn't always get everything that they wanted or needed. This game could have been rushed even more than it was, ironically, and it still got a little bit of extra time. But it's so obvious when you go back through it with an analytical perspective that the level design just starts falling apart the further into it you get. Now, this is fairly common for games from this era. Even good games from this era, like Halo 2 and Final Fantasy XII, are both games that just kind of start to fall apart after a certain point because rushed deadline. So, you get through this game, and it's just the levels. The first stage, cool, I'm with that. We go through Bianca Hills. It's pretty enjoyable. It's a very fun, safe thing. It does pretty much everything that Bob on Battlefield did right. There's no instant death. There's no screw yous. There's no traps. There's no gotchas. Lots of different types of movement tech. You figure out the bounces. You figure out how to navigate the water. You figure out how to navigate things on the water because that's their own physics. You can climb stuff. You can jump on stuff. There's walls next to other walls, so you can figure out wall jumping. There's the backward spin. There's movable platforms. There's enemies which attack you from both a horizontal and a vertical axis. Pretty much everything you need to know about how to play the game is right there. As usual for a Mario game, the first stage tutorializes brilliantly. No real complaints there. Then we get to the harbor. This is when we start to see some of the seams to show. My personal favorite is when you have to do the red coins and the bloopers. Now you're probably thinking, what's wrong with that? It's not that hard to get the coins. No, it's not. But once you get the 8th coin, the shine shows up on a chunk of... on several planks of wood. Now I say it that way because each of those planks kind of has their own little collision. And if you hit something while you're on the blooper, you die just like that. And you can already see the problem here because now you have to navigate back there and then successfully jump up and catch the shine without going too far, because if you fail that jump, you're going to be going so fast, you're probably not going to be able to recover unless you're coming at it from a very specific angle. And if you're coming at it from that angle, you have a chance to run into the other chunks, the little rafts that are bouncing around, which, again, collision and instant death. There's a lot of physics jank in this game. And most of it's bad because most of it leads to death. One of my personal favorites is on the final boss fight. I literally clipped through the ground and just died because there's nothing I can do about that. Anyways. So yeah, and then we move forward a little bit. Okay. We're doing the amusement park. I can't think of the name of the damn place. And it's like, okay, now we're starting to see a little bit more bullcrap, like an entire section where you have to crawl up the backside of the platforms, but the camera does not know what you're doing. The camera insists that you want to look at this wall, which is blocking your vision, and will constantly try to swivel that way because it's misinterpreting, remember that assist thing I mentioned, where it thinks you're going. This is on top of the fact that the controls, I can't believe this, the controls are flipped in this game. Now let me explain what I mean by that. So let's say you're grappling, like the fences or whatever, like back in Mario World. So you can grapple on a fence like this, or you can grapple like this, hanging from one, okay? You with me? If you're hanging, if you hit one of the buttons, you will hit above you and move up if there's a platform above you, like there's a flipper. The other button will drop and you'll plummet to your death, okay? Now, on the horizontal ones, the vertical ones rather, those buttons are flipped. One of those buttons smashes, which is the exact opposite of the previous one, and the other one jumps off and you plummet to your death. Please explain that one to me. So, between control issues and camera issues and several other issues I could mention, we start to get into the suckitude. This is also when the secret stages start to get kind of mean. I don't even want to talk about the secret stages, but honestly, the secret stages, I can explain so easily why the secret stages suck. First of all, the obvious reason. They're all bottomless pits, so any failure is death. They usually give you a 1-up towards the beginning to enable you to not have to game over. That's neat. But for the most part, any failure is instant failure, and you have to start over all at the beginning, which is the major problem. If you remember those secret levels, do me a favor. Think about that. Think about the secret levels for a second. Every single secret stage in this game has a point at which a mid-mission checkpoint should be there. It isn't. There's no mid-mission checkpointing. But all of them have this one section in the middle of the stage, which is a breather platform. There's nothing there. There's nothing challenging you. There's no difficulty. It is the perfect spot for a little flag or a little checkpoint or whatever that gives you a mid-mission checkpointing. They don't do that for some reason. Instead, if you die on the final jump, which plus certainly I've done plenty of times, you get to do the whole stage all over again. Okay. And it just goes down from there. Now, Nokia Bay is kind of a caveat. That's the asterisk. That's the one that works. Nokia Bay is cool. It's actually probably my favorite level in the game. By the way, as usual, I'm curious of your favorite levels and your favorite song. I've actually given away my favorite song already. It's the Delfino Plaza song. I love that song. Second would be Corona Mountain. But after Nokia Bay and its joy, we run into Serena Beach and the frickin' Pianta Village. Serena Beach is one of my favorite levels visually in terms of the atmosphere and the tone. You got the sunset, you got the people just chilling, and they're all freaking out because the hotel's gone. And it has some of the worst shines in the game. All of which are mandatory because that's the nature of how the game works. You have to get those you have to get the 7th shine. There are ways to glitch and speedrun your way to a further shine to skip some, but what you're supposed to do is to do shine 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, and then you move on to the next stage. And that's what you're supposed to do. By the way, nothing in the game tells you that. So good luck figuring that out. I remember as a kid, and by a kid I mean I was in my 20s at this point. I was a little boy. I guess 20s is still a kid. When I was in my 20s, I remember going through this stupid game and thinking it was like Mario 64. So it's like I hit a particular shine I was having issues with. And I was like, you know what, I'll just move on to the next level because I've already unlocked the next level. So I move on to the next level, which I'm unlocked as if it was Mario 64, and I start doing the things there. And I ran into a shine I was having issues with, so I moved on to the next stage. And I did that for basically every stage. I think Nokia Bay was the only one I actually swept. And then I got to the end and the game wasn't allowing me to progress. And I was starting to get confused. And by this point I had like 70 shines because I'd been getting all the secret shines and all the coin shines and all the blue coin shines and all that stuff. And yet the game wasn't allowing me to progress and I didn't know what to do. And this was kind of the early days of the internet. So all I had was forums and game facts at this point in time. And, so I was like, okay, what the heck am I doing wrong? And finally a friend of mine told me, oh yeah, you gotta do the Bowser shine. Which ones are those ones? Well, it's the 7th of each stage. And that's when it just sort of clicked with me. Despite pretenses to the contrary, this is a linear game. So, optional stuff is nice. Optional stuff doesn't have to have a point. That it's there for additional content. That's why it's optional, right? But as we've talked about before, there's a difference between optional main, primary optional, and secondary optional, right? Primary optional is stuff that's meat. It's core content. It's stuff you want to do, like the loyalty missions in Mass Effect 2. Secondary stuff is stuff that's just, it's there for bonus material. And the optional stuff in these kind of games should be core material. It should be meat, but it's not. Almost every one of the optional shines sucks in this game. Especially getting the red coins on the secret stages. Or the 100 coins, which you can only get on certain stages. Or the blue coins, which are garbage in general. Never mind all of the secret bonus optional shines, most of which suck to some extent or another, like shoving the watermelon down, or let's go ahead and call out the one that everyone in chat has probably, or and by chat I mean comment section, has already typed up before they even got to this point of the video, the pachinko one. The pachinko one is really bad, by the way, because it's RNG, and it's so easy to explain. That's why. Wonky physics and randomness. So little of what happens in that stage is up to you. It's all about just kind of going with it because it's pachinko. That's how that works. Cool. That's actually not my least favorite. My least favorite is probably the Chakya stage. The Chakya secret stage, where you have to talk to them, and the angle at which you talk to them and the specific person you talk to determines how they toss you. And you have a bit of control in the air, which is good because you need it for several of these things. And because of the way the camera works, there's no guidance. There's no knowing where it's going to toss you. There's just hoping that you got it correct, or knowing ahead of time. So much of that is out of your control unless you already know it, which is not exactly good design to begin with. Oh, and by the way, the Chakya stage is mandatory. So all of that sucks. And it leaves me with this simple impression. You remember how I talked about the idea of adding checkpoints and making the coins permanent, adding coin permanence in 64 as a way to fix that game? And I feel like those two relatively minor changes would fix Mario 64 like that. I feel like those two changes would make that game substantially better. It could use some polish on several other things, notably Rainbow Ride, but there's still, I think that would be an improvement. I can't point to one or two things like that in Mario Sunshine. The problem with Mario Sunshine is everything. It needs a polishing pass. It needs someone to go through and look at this stage and say, okay, this specific shine needs to go like this. Okay, now let's look at this shine. Okay, this needs to go this way. All right, let's look at this shine. Let's go to this way. And, well, there are mods, like the infamous Mario Sunburn, which try to fix some of this. Most of that is band-aiding problems rather than actually fixing them. Because, again, it needs someone to go through and really polish this game on a level-to-level basis. It needs that extra time, which is why I mentioned the rush thing earlier. For those of you not aware, this game did score net positive. God, I'm sorry, I have an itch like right on the edge of my nose, right there on that bridge or whatever it's called. Well, I have an idea. There we go. I knew this was worth something. This game scored net positive on the golden number. Barely. And almost all of that is because the narrative axis, with the enjoyability of the atmosphere and the music and the tone and the NPCs, dragged it upward, because I gave this game a net negative on the gameplay axis, and I stand by that. While it does several things very good, 14 total gameplay positives, it does so much wrong. I think it's actually 17, sorry. It's delicious. There's so much, and it's almost always the level design. And I want you to really process that sentence for a second. The biggest complaint I have about this game, if I was to put it into one sentence, is the level design in a Mario game. Some people in the past have had the impression, probably because of other reviewers, that I enjoy being negative about games. This is extremely not true. The ideal would be to have a situation where every game gets positives and it's awesome and wonderful. And I'm just tired and sad and a little hurt. As weird as that sounds, I will probably never replay this game. If I do, I will probably only play the first few stages. Just roam around and have fun with it and then put it down. This game kind of sucks. And I'm sad about that. Because this is a game that a remaster and a port isn't going to fix. We would need a proper remake of this game to really improve it. Now, that being said, some of you may know this. You can leave if you don't care about this, but because I'm basically done. But one of the things I like to do is I like to build games in my head that I will probably never actually get to make, but it's fun, and I love game design. I've got a bunch bouncing around in there, and I take notes just to make sure I don't forget them. But one of the things you may know is there's a lot of games I've been doing work in my head on proper remakes of. Now, most of those are games I know extremely well, like the Mega Mans or the Final Fantasies, stuff that I know inside and out. But I've started thinking through this about how I would do a proper remake of this game and how to polish it and to improve it and to change. Okay, well, let's make it so that this section has this, and let's make it so that there's this giant lava pit here, and the lava functions like this, so it allows you to recover on this if you die, and let's put a checkpoint right here, which gives you a thing, and let's get rid of the lives entirely. They serve no purpose in this game whatsoever. They're literally just padding in this one. And, just all of the ideas I've come up with, because I would love to have a crack at doing a proper remake of this game. Which I guess isn't really in its favor, but make of that what you will. As always, I'm curious of your thoughts. Favorite stage, favorite song. What would you do in a proper remake of this game? Looking forward to the comments, and terrified of the comments. We're done with the Mario mini block for now. Next up, we're covering Doom 64, so hopefully that should be interesting. Oh yeah, and just quiet plug that someday we should totally do an audit run of Mario Galaxy 2, and Mario Odyssey. Plug. See you next time.